Zelete, thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. In a recent interview on France Inter, former French Prime Minister Dominique de Villepin delivered a sharp warning about the war in Ukraine. While Western political dialogue often focuses strictly on frontline combat, Villepin argues that a much larger geopolitical shift is taking place right under their own eyes. According to Villepin, Russia has successfully built deep connection across the global south. Moscow is not isolated on the world stage. It has managed to bring millions of people and entire governments to its side, or at least keep them neutral. Why is this happening? Because Russia is actively leveraging widespread anti-Western sentiment. Philippine points out that across the BRICS alliance and throughout Africa, there is growing resentment toward Western power. In several African nations, citizens and leaders are actively demanding an end to Western military and political influence, specifically calling for French forces to leave. Russia did not create this resentment out of nowhere, but Moscow is using it as a major political leverage. Because Russia holds this global advantage, Villepin argues that Putin does not need to win dramatic new battle victories in Ukraine to achieve his goal. Instead, Russia benefits simply by freezing the conflict. A frozen war plays into Moscow's hands because time is working against Ukraine, against Europe, and against the United States. The US is increasingly distracted by its primary rival, China. As Washington's focus shifts to Asia, Russia calculates that Western unity will eventually break down.
Russia indeed has a large part of the world's peoples with it. Russia has managed to neutralize a large...
With her or neutral? Are they with her or are they neutral?
But it's more than neutral.
Only
to the extent that this anti-Western sentiment is very widely shared. If we consider the BRICS, if we consider Africa, we can clearly see today how Africa is rising against us, trying to ensure that France leaves Africa. There is an extremely active sentiment. We are mistaken if we talk about neutrality, and this ability to leverage this aspect of the world is an element that today works in favor of Russia. That's why the situation is unequal. Let's not forget, Russia does not need to score points on the Ukrainian front today. It needs to freeze the situation because time is against us, against Ukraine, against Europe, and even against the United States, which is diverted from its major objective, China.
The editorialist C.D. Kaufman was wondering in Le Monde fundamentally how did we get here, and she said that we will need to critically examine our blindness, our complacency over 2 decades towards Putin's Russia. Necessary examination. Dominique de Villepin.
Yes, a necessary examination because there are several stages in this relationship with Russia. There is a first stage, without going back to Methuselah, which is right after the Soviet collapse. Did we seize all the opportunities to integrate Russia, to send signals to the Russian people in order to...
We did it.
We did it. The question is, did we do it enough? And could we have done more?
Did he
Everything
want it?
must be put on the table.
I believe that in the chaos that was of the former Soviet Union, it was difficult. There is a second stage that starts from 2007, Vladimir Putin's speech in Munich, the intervention in Georgia, the intervention in Crimea and Donbass. Were we not too naive? Yes, absolutely. Did we know how to send the right signals at the right time to mark the limits not to be crossed? From that point of view, there are certainly, yes, things to reconsider. But the essential thing today is to be able to face it, to maintain the unity of Europe. And we can clearly see that this is the primary concern of French diplomacy and Emmanuel Macron.
He reaffirmed it in Munich. We must work together, knowing that regarding Russia, they want to oppose us, Eastern and Western European countries. But in some respects, we are complementary. There are countries neighboring Russia that naturally fear this imperial neo-colonial risk, as Emmanuel Macron says.
And we have a vision of Russia as a global power, and we can clearly see that we cannot rule out a future relationship with Russia, because we must try to find a balance in a world dominated by the United States and China, where the triangulation capacity of European diplomacy is important.
With Russia, but with Putin.
But once again, what is the lesson we learn from Iraq? It is that every time democracies engage in a policy of regime change, they have...
It's not about changing the regime. It's about talking, negotiating with Vladimir Putin today.
Once again, we did not want to fully pursue inspections with Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was an odious character. We reaped chaos and terrorism. We did not want at one point to push things with Gaddafi's Libya. We reaped chaos and the situation and the Sahel. So we must learn the lessons of history. Of course, it's difficult. I will not tell you otherwise. When we see the atrocities committed in Bucha and elsewhere in Ukraine, it is very difficult.
But what a lesson in this case.
Well, the lesson is precisely that you must know how to start a war and conduct it at the right time. You must know at some point how to create the conditions for peace.
Oh, we're there now.
To explain how we reached this point, he traces the crisis back 30 years. He identifies three clear historical phases in the West's relationship with Russia. First, after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, the West failed to integrate Russia or give real guarantees to the Russian people during a decade of severe economic chaos. Second, by 2007, marked by Vladimir Putin's speech at the Munich Security Council, Russia signaled that it will no longer accept a world dominated entirely by the West. What followed were military actions in Georgia in 2008 and in Crimea and in the Donbass in 2014. He argues that Western nations were far too naive during this period, failing to set firm boundaries or react effectively. Third, he arrives at a current crisis where Europe is forced to confront the limits of its power and its own internal divisions. He emphasizes that maintaining European unity is the hardest part of the equation. Eastern European countries share a border with Russia and naturally view Moscow as an immediate imperial threat. Western European nations sitting further away tend to view Russia as a major global power that must eventually be balanced through diplomacy. Villepin warns that despite these conflicting views, Europe must stay united. He also said, now when you look at what is happening currently and the kind of power Russia is gaining, it is very important for them to unite or see a way of working together with Russia. If not, they will be at the wrong side of history because now they have lost all their power, all their influence. And a lot of people, like he said in Africa, do not want to have anything to do with Europe. Everybody is asking them to leave. And what they need to do best is to now go closer to Russia. He is not the first person that is calling for Europe to now work alongside Russia. We even heard the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni also calling for them to unite with Russia. Germany also called for the unification with Russia. When they look at what is happening, like he rightfully said, that the United States of America right now is not in the current state to support them. Therefore, they need to now turn their attention to Russia. This is why now we are asking Africa to shift focus. Look at ECOWAS nations signing security pact with Russia, a memorandum of understanding, calling Russia to come and help them fight against the insecurity that they have in West Africa. We have seen how ECOWAS shifted its attention on France and the West, believing that these are the only people that can help us fight against the TT activities. But when you listen to what the Algerian president said, the people that are always preaching coming into Africa to help us fight against these people are the ones who created the situation, and they are still the ones that are making sure we continue to have these TT activities in Africa. According to the Algerian president, this is not an African problem, but it is something that was imposed on us. When you listen to the foreign minister of Ghana, he says that Russia supported their resolution against this slave trade and calling for reparation. And Russia has always been a friend, and Russia has always supported Africa. And for this reason, we need to work hand in hand with Russia. We are hearing a lot from the Sahel states, like Basil Morbazi, telling us the same thing, that we are with Russia because in history, Russia has never colonized us. Russia has never come into the continent to determine what we should do and what not to do. And who wouldn't want to be with a friend that will allow you to take your own decisions to favor you than to continue to be with somebody who sees you as a child that he needs to control you all the time? Now they themselves are feeling the heat and they need Russia. They can't hide it anymore. They have been saying this openly for a very long time now. If these same people who have the power and we believe that they are the ones that can help us are also crying that they have lost that power, and for that matter they need to work with Russia without nobody controlling them like the United States of America having a say, why then do Africans need to continue to be with the same people who can't even help themselves, to talk of helping us? We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall, and united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we'll make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world, in Europe and in France.